how are we organizing our political life. So how have we done that? When it comes to that, what we did, we said let's have democracy. Now this is a deliberate choice. You don't go for democracy, who said? But we decided we'll go for democracy. Once you choose democracy, then you have the option that do you want to go for a parliamentary form of government, or you want to realize democracy via presidential form of government, or there is a third way also, which is semi-presidential. This also exists in different countries. So if I talk about countries like France, very good, Sri Lanka, they have a semi-presidential form of government. If I talk about presidential, let's say USA is an example. If I talk about parliamentary form, let's say India, UK, they are example. All are democracies. You can realize democracy via a certain form of government. This is what form of government. Which form of government do you want to adopt? We adapted the parliamentary form of government. Then you can realize democracy via a republic also, via a monarchy also. Republic means the head of the state is going to be elected. Head of the state in case of India is the president. Because president is elected, although not directly elected, you don't participate in the election of president. Whenever people will participate, we'll call it direct election. When people will not participate, people in the sense citizens of India. Okay. If your representative is participating in an election, that's an indirect election. So with respect to the election of president, you don't participate, but your representatives participate. We call this form of election as indirect election, where you are not actually voting. But nevertheless, the head of the state is elected. If we take the example of Britain, the head of the state is not elected. It's a hereditary position. So the king is the head of England. When you have this kind of a system, that's called a monarchy. Head of the state is a hereditary office. UK is an example of this. That doesn't mean that they are not a democracy. Having head of the state as a hereditary person, this does not mean that you are not a democracy. It simply means you are realizing democracy by keeping your head of the state as a hereditary office. We could have also done the same. In case of Canada, in case of Australia, their head of the state is the King of England. They were colonies. Canada, Australia, they were colonies of Britain. So the British left, but these colonies, they decided that they will keep their head of the state as the King of England only. So as of today also, their head of the state is the king, which does not have any relevance legally, because the head of the state does not have any power, neither in India nor in UK. It's a symbolic head. It's just a symbol. But if the symbol is elected, republic, if not, monarchy. I am realizing democracy in this manner. Then I can further realize democracy by choosing a way in which the elections will take place. They can either take place where you choose your representatives, it becomes a representative democracy, and where you do not choose your representatives, but rather you yourself take the decisions, it becomes a participatory democracy. In representative democracy, what do? We choose our representatives who finally make the laws. That is what happens in India. What has happened few months back when the general elections took place? You chose 543 MPs. or you chose 543 representatives who will go, who will sit in the parliament and who will finally start making laws. So recently they went to parliament, they said we'll make laws, but then adjournment happened, then disruption started happening, they are unable to make laws. Have you been following the current affairs? The winter session has started and they are not able to function because the opposition is constantly saying that we want a discussion on the Adani matter which is going on, the criminal charges which are being filed in the US against Adani. We want a discussion on that, and the government says we don't want to have a discussion. So now they are fighting. The parliament is unable to function. The representatives are not doing anything as of now. They are fighting. If you don't have something like this, and if you yourself take the decision, you yourself make the laws, that is the example of participatory democracy. Across the world, you will not see this happening at a large scale. In countries across the world, you will find this only because it is a practical form of doing things. This, every 15 days you are invited to take a, you are being invited, okay, participate, tell, we are deciding on a particular bill and your suggestions are needed, and if you say yes, only then we'll pass the bill, if not then we'll not. How many of you will go every 15 days? It's not practical that people themselves take decisions on a daily basis or on a regular basis. However, there can be some matters which can be put to people to decide. In 2016, Britain said to their people, decide whether we should stay in EU or should we come outside of EU. And the people of Britain voted. Why? Because the British Parliament is also not able to decide whether they should stay in European Union or they should come out of European Union. So what to do? They are like, give it to people. Let them take the decision. When you do something like this, that's called a referendum. A referendum is whereby you ask people to give their opinion, and depending on what the people says, the decision will be taken. So if the people say we stay with EU, they'll stay with EU. If the people say don't stay with EU, they'll leave EU. This can be done. Britain is an example of representative democracy only, but on some places they can use some tools and they become participatory democracy. But only at few places where there is a big problem. Otherwise, normally we'll say Britain is an example of representative democracy. Rather, across the world, all the states, they have representative democracy only. Why? It is practical, as simple as that. Now, your representatives will be chosen every 5 years. You vote for them and you send them. Now, if I say what is the political system of India, we have a representative democracy which is being realized via a parliamentary form of government, and we are a republic. That is what India is. I can do the same activity for different countries. So if somebody is not a democracy, now this classification is only relevant as of now for democracies. If some country is not a democracy, for example, Saudi Arabia, they are not a democracy. There, the head of the state is the king, and the king has all the powers also. But that doesn't mean that they will not have legislature, judiciary, executive wings. They will have, but the absolute authority or the final authority may rest in the king. Whereas in democracies, the final authority will always be with representatives. It cannot be with a particular person. When there is power with a particular person or in a particular office, that is centralization of power. Power is centralized. Centralization of power is opposite to the idea of democracy.